Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Accepting Reality. I'm David alongside with Jake. Jake, how you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Lots of stuff to talk about. I'm sure our conversation is going to go in many different directions, as it always does. The first one, I think this is the pretty big one, but surprisingly, a lot of people, even conservatives that I know, don't really know what's happening with the Canada convoy, the Freedom Convoy and the truckers protests. A lot of people don't really know. They just know it kind of happened and then there was a trouble of them getting over the border. But now it's a full on, like they're calling it an insurrection and an occupation, which is completely untrue. That's just the leftist media. And Prime Minister Trudeau, who is really not a very good person, he said in a press conference, I think he's last week or 2 weeks ago, that the truckers represent a quote unquote fringe minority who hold unacceptable views. If that doesn't sound like a tyrant, I don't know what is. Like he just said, you're not allowed to think this way. We will silence you. Like, because they don't want to be forced to get the vaccine. This is all because the truckers didn't want the vaccine mandates in their industry. But yeah, funny enough, I think 75 to 85% of them are vaccinated. And most of them protesting are vaccinated, but they just don't like that they're being forced.
Right. And they're probably sticking up for the other people who they don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to get the vaccine.
I remember seeing a video that social media promptly shut down of this trucker who, I mean, if you find it, fair warning, he swore quite a bit in it, saying like, I've been a trucker for 30 years and now I'm not going to be able to feed my wife and give money to my grandkids because they think I need to get a vaccine. And he's like, if you actually read it, the vaccine doesn't do anything. And again, just what he said in that he was really angry. And that was kind of like the fire that started the Freedom Convoy. And it's gotten so bad. Sorry, did you want to say something, Mike?
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, aren't we at the point now where we can definitively say, at least in order to raise speculation and questioning, that this vaccine and the preventative measures that we've been told we should be taking in order to stop the spread of the vaccine are a bunch of baloney? I mean, the mask thing, even I've heard people that one of those people that would wear masks in the car by themselves early on, like those people I've even heard that I know now who are like, well, the masks really don't do anything. It's got to be the N95 in order to do, like, even they're sort of becoming on that side of, well, let's just move on. We'll just roll the dice, whatever. Like, let's, and now you still see these people, like what's going on in Canada, the government who's just like, the vaccine still works. We're still going to make you get it, even though that there's dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds, if not thousands, of documented cases where the vaccine does not work. And there's no conclusive evidence to say that you need to get it. And if you get it, it's going to be better for everybody around you.
Yeah. And what the government of Canada has done should scare the living heck out of everybody who believes in freedom. So I think it was about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, someone started a GoFundMe for the truckers who are just parked outside the capital of Canada to give them food, to give them fuel, to give them water, stuff like that. They were going to donate money to support them. It got up to, I believe, $10 million.
10 million, yeah.
And then GoFundMe froze the money. Because the Canadian government reached out to them and said, you can't give them this money. So GoFundMe colluded with the private sector, or the public sector. And those truckers did not get their money. And the outcry for that was so bad. Now GoFundMe is just individually refunding people. And I know for a while, there was a growing, people were passing this idea around of pushing back the charge on your credit card. Because after a certain amount of times that the bank or the credit card company has to push back a charge from a website, they fine the website. So they were trying to hurt GoFundMe in return for not giving them the money.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So they're trying to like fight back, so to speak. I don't think that ever went through, but I remember seeing some people on Twitter saying, protest the charge on your account, and eventually GoFundMe will get hit with a huge fine. Okay, so then these people, these freedom-loving, good people who just want to live their life and not be told what to put in their body, went to the alternate to GoFundMe, which is called Give, Send, Go. It was created by a conservative, not as big of a platform, not as many capabilities, but it still does the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Got up to $2 million, and the Canadian government went after them. And then conveniently, a bunch of hackers, quote unquote, shut their server down.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very, very convenient that a bunch of hackers, right when this was starting to pick up again, and these people were actually going to get the money that people are willingly trying to give them in support of the cause, shut down their servers. And now, I think we were talking about this a little bit. The deputy prime minister tried to explain how they're going to monitor these crowdfunding websites for like terrorist and money laundering. I think that's what they said. They're going to expand their reach to include crowdfunding websites in the name of their anti-money laundering and terrorist funding. Isn't that they're
Yeah.
calling these people terrorists? It's
Yeah.
despicable.
Yeah. They said it falls under that the parameters of their bill that and policies in order to prevent terrorism.
Because sitting there in your truck honking your horn is now the same as 9/11. Yeah, congratulations.
Now, who owns GoFundMe?
Um,
Who owns that? Do we
I
know?
want to say it's a child company of a really big tech company, but I could be wrong. Kind of like how like Twitch is owned by Amazon. I think that's like a similar relationship. I just don't know who owns them,
Let's see
but
if I can find this.
I know they colluded with the Canadian government because there was a Zoom call that got leaked that the CEO of GoFundMe said, "Yeah, we will cooperate."
Let's see. Who owns GoFundMe? It looks like they had an idea for a company and then they molded it into what is now GoFundMe. Since 2010, they've raised over $3 billion
Impressive.
over their things. So somebody, but somebody must own that. I mean, the sharing, somebody must own a certain amount of shares in that company that would have influenced that decision to, take all that stuff down and give all the money back and decide what they were going to do with that 10 million.
Yeah, now it's being refunded to each individual person, but they said it will take up to 30 days for some refunds. Isn't that convenient? They're trying to punish people for it. That's what it is.
What is the end goal of the truckers? Like, do they are they just going to sit there forever until they get an answer on what, or are they just kind of doing it as they go? Because somebody was like, even the conservatives in Canada are like, okay, they've made their point. Like, it's time to get up and go. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah, well, here's the thing. Ontario, Alberta, and Montreal have all dropped their vaccine mandates.
So now,
So
how?
they're
Yeah.
they're waiting for Trudeau to cave in and drop all That's what they're going to try to hold out for.
Now, isn't the Canadian government? Didn't Trudeau say that they're going to have they're going to get bigger trucks to tow away the trucks that are there
So
because those trucks are threatening the stability of the government? I think is what he said.
that leads into what I was going to say because this got even better. You know how the Billy Mays commercials, but wait, there's more. This is what we're at now.
Yeah.
So
Wait, there's more.
yesterday or 2 days ago, Justin Trudeau announced that he was invoking the Canadian Emergencies Act. Now,
Yeah,
that's basically martial law. For anyone who for a quick comparison to the US, that's martial law. For the next 7 days, the prime minister can freeze anyone's assets without any court order or anything. And then after 7 days have expired, then it goes to their parliament to vote. And then they would stay frozen for another 23 days. And then in the wording, they said that the government can compel companies to do what they ask, which means they're going to force you or you're going to go to jail. And that's what he's going to do with the tow trucks. And he's going to try to cut off their ability to get food and fuel for the cars because, it's like 0 degrees Fahrenheit there right now. It's dangerously cold for humans to be out there. And this guy's just like, nope, you guys aren't complying to my, tyrannical government. I will make your life miserable. So this is straight up martial law. Canada, for the next 5 to 7 days, is under straight up martial law where the government can do whatever they want. and the people have no rights.
See, now, okay, no, I don't know much about the history of Canada, but
They did burn down the White House.
well, see, that's the thing. They don't come across as the kind of people to be very revolting and very like I don't see them just coming out and saying, okay, well, this is it. If you don't give us our freedom back, we're gonna fight. They don't seem like those kind of people because they don't have a history of it.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing something, but I don't know that.
No, they submitted. That's why for a while the Queen of England was on their money.
But I want to say, but they're not fighting anybody. They're causing a ruckus, but they're not actually like saying they don't get involved in wars that much. They just kind of send a couple thousand people here and there, and with the little
say that they were
maple
involved.
leafs and
yeah.
So that's what I mean is I don't know if they're actually going to do anything with this because they haven't shown that they would stand like that wouldn't work in the United States because if you push us too far, we're going to fight back.
Yes.
And we'll just start over again. But they don't. The Canadians they don't come across that way to me.
And also, this might shock people. I believe Canada has like 12% of the U.S. population. Like, I don't even think there's 50 million people living in Canada. It's so much barren wasteland because it's so far north. You know.
Let's see. Well, let's look.
Look up the population of Canada.
Canada, oh Canada. Let's see.
I see 35 million on my.
Yeah, it's not that much.
So that's like 10% of America because we're probably close to 350 million because we haven't done a full census in a while. So
yeah, right, probably right around there. Yeah.
So I mean, think about that. That's another reason, and that's another reason why, for example, if President Biden or whoever's controlling President Biden wants to put in martial law to make everyone get the vaccine or be taken away, it would just be a full-on war.
Yeah, that would never work.
It would never work. It would just end so poorly,
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that because one, the government's set up differently here than it is there, but also because you in order to do that, you would have to bypass so many legislation. I mean, you would have to go so far out of your way to make that happen, just to simply have that go through and it wouldn't even work because people would just be. But if people got wind that was happening, they would just go crazy.
Well, technically, the president can do it without any legislation because he's the commander in chief. It was put in there, and because Abe Lincoln did it. Obviously, it's different when the country's completely killing itself, but like president can simply just say, we're suspending Congress under martial law.
Okay, yeah. No, that would never happen.
But I'm saying it's technically possible, but it wouldn't happen. It's in the rule book, but it's a rule you don't use. Yeah,
and I just like to see him try that. Actually, we just had to see what would happen, but I don't think he would.
Remember when we thought Trump was going to do it during the riots? We thought we were going to see martial law.
Yeah, which would have been a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea to do martial law because, and it's so weird that that's even a option because it's so anti Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're taking away the rights that everybody has, and leaving it up to the military in order to decide what you can and can't do. So it's just weird that it's even in there. But it would be a terrible idea no matter what happens.
I honestly think it's only in there for if we got invaded. That's what I really think. That's because if like someone. Maybe. We were like being like ships approaching the shore, I could see it happening, but otherwise, no, there's absolutely no reason. But going back to, the summer of love in 2020, when everything got burnt down, remember when we were watching the live feed of them getting close to the White House fence and you were telling me things that you read about how there's like how X amount of Secret Service people like watching times, like if they started rushing the White House, they'd all get picked off.
It's like there's people in the world who are such good marksmen, they can hit a bottle cap from like 1,000 feet or 1,000 yards. Okay, they get all those kind of people, and they put a suit on them or whatever, and then they hide them on the lawn somewhere so that somebody who thinks that they have a chance to jump over the fence and run at them, like it wouldn't. And I was actually kind of hoping. I remember because this was like late at night, and there were people
Really
tweeting
late.
that we're gonna storm the White House. We're gonna take it back, and they said Trump was underneath the bunker, like they were keeping him away because they didn't know what was going to happen. And I was saying, go ahead and try it. It's going to take one person to get shot, and then everybody else is going to they're going to forget about it. They're going to say, you know, actually, we're going to change our mind about this because it's impossible. You can't do it. It's like when people talk about. I heard some people talk about one time to bomb the White House or to crash a plane into the White House. If you fly a plane a certain amount of miles, I don't know what the radius is, maybe 5 miles, 10 miles, they have like an F-16 that's like within 30 seconds, like right next to you.
Yep.
And you have to say, they ask you, like, you need to respond. You're in a restricted airspace. And if you don't, they just shoot you down.
They just shoot you down. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is just not going to happen. You're going to storm the White House. Jump over the fence as if it's that easy. We'll just jump over the fence and we'll run a couple 100 feet, go through the door, and do what?
Yeah.
People are just so stupid. I would love to see that because it would have been the dumbest thing you'd ever see.
I've seen some pretty dumb things, but
I mean, that would have been like, well, there was the whole January 6th thing with at the Capitol when Nancy Pelosi didn't, you know, was knew about it 2 days before, and she didn't get any extra security. So there was like 2 lone police officers on the steps of the Capitol.
yeah, and then it was, and I'm convinced that there were people there provoking them, like feds and stuff, to make Trump look bad. But that's a conspiracy theory. What's not a conspiracy theory is a video just got released. It's crazy how it's over a year old and there's still first-time footage being released. Like, come on, how do you not have all? There's a video of a woman who was claimed to be trampled by the crowd. That's what the report said, like her injuries. But the video shows she's unconscious because a cop beat the heck out of her. And then while she's laying on the ground unconscious, this cop is beating her over the head with a club. I'm not kidding. This is what it was. I forgot the name. It was a female cop.
Right.
And it was a female that got apparently quote unquote trampled. But the video clearly shows this woman's lying on the ground, not moving. And this cop is just wailing on her. Like, you know how in a video game where if a player's down, you can just keep hitting them? That's what it looked like.
And so it kind of reminds me, do you remember when, I think it was when Trump was running the first time, 2016, 15-ish, and I can't quite remember where he was. I don't know if it was him or if it was somebody in his entourage. They moved a lady out of the way, and she said that they like violently pushed her and she was pressing charges, and they had video footage of it, and it was literally nothing. And he went on CNN, and he was like, Trump went on CNN, and I think it was Anderson Cooper was saying all this stuff, and he was like, hold on a second. And he pulled out the paper of the transcript of what she had said because Anderson Cooper was backing up, and he was like, no, she never said that. And he was like, hold on, I'll show you. And then pulled it right out. Like, it's just, people are just crazy.
Yeah, the media is, I said this to my wife tonight. If people honestly believe that any media is objective, then they're just willfully ignoring it. Because every media
both sides
has a slant. You know, I listen to the Daily Wire and I listen to Louder with Crowder. They have a slant and they're not afraid to say it. You know, CNN still says they're being objective. I don't know how, but they still say it on their, you know.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I saw the other day, so you know this whole thing that's been going around with Hillary Clinton and
the
probe to
the Durham report.
yeah.
And
so they said that, and I'll ask you how long. Okay, so it was ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and I don't know of another. I think there was one more network. I forget which one. Out of the 5, over the last 2 days, how much air coverage do you think they spent talking about that?
Oh, I would say all in all, over like 6 networks, like an hour, maybe 10 minutes a piece, because they don't want that to come out.
They said NBC, ABC, MSNBC, whatever this other one I can't think of. They did 0 minutes. CNN was the only one, and they did 2 minutes and 40 seconds. of talking about this.
And it's a port that could possibly arrest one of the biggest, it could be
Yeah.
a bombshell.
But let's imagine Trump
Oh my gosh, that's all we'd hear about.
froze accounts, or there was something that came out where somebody said without any evidence, which is the same thing that happened in the Russian collusion, comes out and says that Trump, let's just say they said, in an effort to make sure that if he lost the election, paid the Russians and infiltrated or colluded with the Russians in order to make sure that Hillary Clinton lost, find something. I mean, if anybody came out and said that, they would be talking about that forever. But the fact that it's Hillary Clinton just shows you exactly what their motives are. And
Their
it's so
allegiances.
obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's ridiculous. Because I'm not saying that she did it. I don't know. Nobody really knows. Because this could just be another one of those things that somebody comes out and says, and I don't think anything's going to be done from it. But I wouldn't put it past her, but you can't
When this
report on that
report
at
keeps
all?
coming out, we'll see.
2
But yeah, there's
minutes
no
and 43
honesty.
seconds?
Yeah, that's like how long you have like an ad for like some sports betting thing or something like that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
there's a clear bias and you don't want to admit it. I think you're a part of the problem. Which leads me, I had a question that I wanted to ask you and I want to talk about in
Oh,
this
geez.
episode. Do you think that both sides are equally responsible for how divided we are in America? Or let's make it even more broader. What do you think are the biggest things that have pretty much divided the country? What do you think it is? Because I have a few thoughts, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
What do I think divided the country, and do I think
The
both sides
most,
are
like,
equal?
yeah,
Well, I think okay. I'll preface it by saying that I don't remember, before 2015, 16. I didn't really pay attention to politics as much because I think it was more vanilla. There wasn't a whole lot going on in the world. There was like the economy and things like that, but there was, Afghanistan was always going on, but there was no
yeah,
major thing going on. There was no conspiracies. It was just kind of things just happen, and it's just kind of what is what it is. And I don't remember there being as much of a narrative of Republican versus Democrat, left versus right, as much as it is now. So I think Trump changed the way that politics was done within the last, what are we at, 6 years?
yeah, that's pretty obvious. Yeah, at least 6 years. Yeah,
The way he acted, the way he talked, spoke, campaigned, everything, that changed the way people looked at politics overall. Because if you notice, people, even when he was debating people in the primaries before he got elected, they would criticize the way that he was talking about them or anybody. And then
yeah,
5 minutes later, they were talking just like him. They would make smart remarks. They would joke about him. They would make fun of him. I mean, they would do the exact things that so he pulled them into like his own game. And Democrats kind of do that now too. So, and I think Trump embedded into Republicans so much about how there's so much corruption and there's so much evil and we got to get rid of these people and these people are stupid and everything, that the right fell on that so hardly. And the left had to respond because the left, they have to compete with us and they have to try to stay relevant. So they have to come up with all this stuff too. It didn't help that, Trump was this person that people made fun of when he first ran, and then he ended up winning. So then they have
like,
to try to get him out or get back at him because he was telling the truth
yep,
about a lot of things that was going on, about how the establishment is. And they didn't like that. But I think it's just now the people are riled up, that Trump riled up. The Republicans are so riled up because of everything he said and how he spoke and how he got them to react and how he got them to think, that now the left being in power is sort of forcing the Republicans and people who vote Republicans in the country to continue that legacy, so to speak, of Trump and calling Joe Biden an idiot. He can't speak and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And Kamala Harris is nowhere to be found. And
yeah,
there's all these issues. So I think that was huge, the way that Trump sort of changed how politics was spoken about and done. And I think that's probably the biggest divider. The biggest divider in this country is not, I don't think, is whether you and I agree on immigration or healthcare or international policy or the economy or anything like that. I think that it all stems from just, if I'm a Republican and I see a Democrat, I have a tendency to assume that they hate this country,
Yeah.
that they're dangerous, that they're stupid, that they're communist and everything. Now, if I'm a Democrat and I'm looking at a Republican, I think that they're too strict. They hate people too much. They have too many policies that only protect themselves and not everybody else. Like I think that whole circle, that gaggle of back and forth, I think that's the biggest problem, is because we've just sort of evolved into this
Tribalism.
Like just so much, I can't think of the word, like fighting back and forth and gnawing at each other, that it's just kind of like dwindling further and further down.
Mm-hmm. Now, I agree with 100% of what you just said, but I don't think both sides are to the blame equally. And here's why. I don't think so either. You can go back 40 years ago. Ronald Reagan was president, right? Mm-hmm. He wanted lower taxes, smaller government. He was pro-life. He was pro-gun, despite what the crazy libertarians think, because he didn't want everyone having fully automatic machine guns. Mm-hmm. He was pro-gun. Mm-hmm. Those are the same beliefs that I hold today. Right. Like, if I could pick a person to model the next president off of, it will be Ronald Reagan. Strong foreign policy, not afraid to stand up for America, telling everyone to back off, that we're in charge. We are the economic superpower, right?
Right.
Look at the Democrats 40 years ago. They were a little bigger government, little higher taxes, abortion only in the first trimester, and if the mother, and the exceptions that they talk about, I won't bring up the exact examples because, this is for everybody.
Right.
Stuff like that. Look how far the left has gone left, and look how we've stayed the same. So we might, and 40 years ago, politically, like you said, it was very vanilla. Even like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it was more vanilla. But the left has gone so far left that, yes, there's a bigger divide because one side went off the cliff while the other side stayed the same. If you have the distance between 1 and 3 is 2, like there's 1 and then there's 2 in the middle, then there's 3. And if you go if you keep the 1 the same and you go to 47, well, now there's a way bigger gap, but it's not because you move both sides, because one side went flying the other direction. And I think that that's where we have to realize, like, a lot of these issues, social issues especially, the left has gone way farther left, and I pretty much have stayed the same in the last 40 years. But maybe I'm looking biased.
Well, I would say yes. And but I would say two things. One, when it's human nature that most of the time when somebody criticizes what you're doing, you don't tend to just say, "Oh, okay, you're right," and then change what you're doing. The more people push back on you, you push away from them, and then you go further to what you're doing. So I think when Trump came in 2016 and was so just brutal and honest and just forthcoming, he didn't sugarcoat anything, I think that pushed them even further. Like, well, we'll show him. And they just kept going to the left, to the left, to the left.
Yeah.
The other thing is the Democrats were not as this left leaning when Obama was president, because not just because they had a Democrat in the office, but there was no hardcore opposition like Trump is.
Yep.
And Trump, like if you're, that example 40 years ago with Ronald Reagan, Republicans had a better relationship with Democrats because of how Republican leaders dealt with Democratic leaders. I mean, this is basically like a big family. You have Democrats and Republicans, and those are the parents. And when the parents get along, the kids get along. But when the parents fight, the kids will fight. So I think that because the left, and I'm not saying this is, I'm criticizing Republicans here, but I just think that because the Republicans were so forthcoming about everything the left was doing wrong, and showcasing it. And that pushed the left further away.
And they dug their heels in.
The voters, the American people on the left, listen to what the left says. They listen to the liberal media, everything. They go with what they say. Just like most of us as Republicans listen to what the right people say. So I just think that when you have, let's face it, how many people, I'll ask you this, how many people do you think that are Republican listen to Republican media of the time? And how much percentage of left voters listen to left wing media?
Oh, like right now, I'd say it's like 90%. Like very
Right.
rarely do people listen to the opposition.
So there you go. So that's exactly what it is. So if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat and you're listening to the media of which you agree with, and they're fired up, you're fired up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just think, like I said, that's why, and this is the same thing with right media too. It's dangerous when you only look at one side, no matter what it is. I mean, even if it's like something like abortion and everything, even just to not even listen, like there's no way that you're going to convince me that abortion is good ever. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
But
I agree.
I would never say that I'm not going to listen to you, because you do have to create some sort of communication.
Dialogue.
In order for like you have to be, hey, you give me, we're at school, we're having lunch. Okay, I don't like carrots, you don't like carrots, and you want to trade me your carrots for my cookies. Okay, well I don't want it, but I'm not going to be like, okay, go jump off a bridge. I don't like those. Then if I ever want something, you're going to be like, no, remember that time that you told me?
Jump off the bridge. Yeah.
You go jump off the bridge too. So I think that has sort of a play in it as well.
Yeah. So I agree completely. And I think where I'm leading this. Do you think we're so divided that the only way we resolve it is secession or war, like civil war?
No, I don't think that. I think because that would be no. I don't
Eventually,
think
we'll figure out how to coexist again. Because right
you're
now
gonna have to. You're gonna have to. You can't like. I think a civil war would be, obviously it's destructive. I mean, you're splitting apart the country, but I also think that's dangerous, because a lot of the countries that don't like us would use that as an opportunity. In the 1800s, nobody knew that we were having a civil war until like 20 years after we had it, because they didn't have any phones. Okay, so like people in Europe heard about us having a civil war in like 1890. So it's not like that now. Like China and Russia and North Korea and all these people would be like, oh, they're fighting against each other. Well, let's go. We can get rid of them even quicker
once
now.
and for all. Yeah.
So I think you're just going to have this. You have to have some sort of bipartisan something, and it might take 2 elections. It might take 3 more from where we are right now. But you do have to have some people that do plan on working together, because once you have the right and they're like, Joe Biden is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, even though he doesn't. I agree with them. And then you have them asking questions. The liberals are like, oh, yeah, well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do this. And then the next Republican president comes in and he's like, well, I'm going to basically call Joe Biden an idiot, and I'm going to reverse everything he did. And then all the liberals are like, well, what do you do? And we liked what he did. And it's just like a never-ending cycle. So somebody has to come in who, it might even be just time, just might need to just evolve, where people the people that are the problem now die, and then you get new people in there who are hopefully a lot more easier to communicate with.
Mm-hmm. My concern, and because I think we've talked about it, that I think there will be it will boil up to a head. I don't know when, but I think it will eventually happen. It's because the last time we had a civil war or states leaving the Union was over an issue of slavery, right? That was
Right.
like everyone agrees.
Right.
There's another issue that the two sides can never agree on, and it's the one you brought up, is that no one will ever be able to tell you that abortion is good. Those are your exact words.
Right.
And the other side wants you to be able to do it up until the moment of birth. Right. So like we already have a social value that cannot be reconciled with one another. And that's the same thing that slowly led to the Civil War 150, 160 years ago. That's why I think it's going to happen, because how can those two views live in a country and, live in the same country without one completely giving up their belief? Right now, we're giving it up because we pay our taxes and the government decides to fund Planned Parenthood with $3 billion every year,
Mhm.
but people are
Yeah.
tired of that. So where does that compromise come? That's just a specific example I had because it parallels slavery to a little bit, not to the magnitude and the depravity of it, but it's still really bad.
Yeah.
Either
I
side
think,
will give on it.
well, I think, okay, so in that argument though, one of the main arguments from the South, which is why they thought that slavery should be kept intact, was because they thought, and they were right, in that they said, okay, well, we have a different terrain than the North. We have a different agricultural system than you do. So in order for us to continue to produce different grains and wheats
And other things.
everything
Yeah.
that you can't do in Ohio what I can do in South Carolina. In
Yep.
order to continue to produce this, we need this help.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not, I never heard any argument from somebody in the South at that time that had said, well, I just want these slaves because I just think that they're less than human. Now, obviously people thought that because they treated them like that.
Yep.
But the argument was that you can't tell us how we should run our facilities, our farms. So I think that argument is different than saying, obviously the North was saying that this is inhuman. You're treating these people, they're pieces of property to you. I think that's different than the abortion argument, where you're arguing whether or not it's a human life and whether that trumps the mother's right to her own convenience. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I agree with you. I think that
Yeah. So you're
both issues
saying
are close, but I think
Yeah.
it stems from two different perspectives
Yeah.
and philosophies.
It does. And I agree with that. I can still see it going south. Like, that was a terrible analogy considering what we just talked about, but I can still see it going where, we become more and more divided, because just in a couple months, the Supreme Court is going to release their ruling on a lawsuit against the Mississippi abortion law. But I don't know if you know this one about, I think it's after a heartbeat or something else.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah, I
can't.
did hear that. Yeah.
And it's being challenged right now in the Supreme Court. And they believe, based on the questioning, legal analysts and political analysts believe that the Supreme Court's going to overturn Roe v. Wade, which then gives each individual state the right to fully ban abortion. I really think you're going to see a lot of unhinged and a lot of unrest if that happens in, like, Texas, because Texas right now, not many people know this, have what's called a trigger bill. I don't know if I've ever told you this. They have a trigger bill in place that's signed. It was passed by the Texas House, the Texas Senate, and then the governor's desk. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, abortion is immediately, permanently outlawed in Texas. Like, that's on the books right now in Texas.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, is I think you're going to see a lot. We talked about the riots and stuff earlier in this episode. I think we're going to see even more if that actually happens, because I do think it will happen, and I will be overjoyed that that states can stand up for life at all forms and all beginning of life and such. But I still think that it's going to cause more unrest than people think.
See, what would be the opposition to that? Because you could say, in a way, okay, listen, there's no constitutional right that we're getting rid of because we're telling you you can't do an abortion. And if they let's say that they say, okay, Roe v. Wade is gone, doesn't exist, we got rid of it, it's now each state's right to
Regulate.
tell you whether or not you want to. Okay, fine, great. Now, why would somebody say, you're telling me that I can't do something? This is, I'm saying this like I'm a liberal, but
Yeah.
if a liberal was telling you, let's say you're in the Supreme Court, and I come to you and I'm like, listen, you can't tell me what I can do with my own body. This is a constitution. This is my constitutional right. And you could tell me, okay, what constitution, what amendment am I infringing that's telling by saying that you can't do an abortion? Not saying you can't do an abortion, just because that I'm not going to tell everybody they can if they want to. What you're saying is you got to go to a state that says
Yeah.
they will let you. And so what's the main opposition to
Well,
just say we'll just let the states do it? That's what was designed in the first place.
that's what a federalist government's supposed to do. Well, because the justices at the time of Roe v. Wade were very liberal, they said that the right to that is under the 14th Amendment about the right to privacy.
No,
I'm not kidding. That's exactly what in their opinion.
That's a stretch.
Yeah, well, that's what they did. So
that's a stretch.
Right now, the reason a state can't fully outlaw it is because the 14th Amendment, quote unquote, protects it.
See, then I wonder if you overturn it, then there's going to be a lot of people that are going to use that as an example to overturn other amendments, because that's like saying that I can kill anybody I want because the Second Amendment says I can have a gun. It makes no sense.
I agree. That's actually a really good comparison when you take the logic and apply it to another amendment or another thing that's a hot issue.
Even though the government is listening to us right now. What's going on, Joe?
Yeah. Yeah. You can look it up. I'm pretty sure it was under the 14th Amendment that they said that a woman has a right to privacy, and this is something that the government can't infringe on.
Well, of course they do, but that's why HIPAA's a thing. Why is
I was going to say, you work in the medical, you know all about HIPAA.
Why can't you just say that of course there's privacy. There's no amendment that has to give you privacy. That's why healthcare organizations say we're not going to tell everybody what you have. I could not tell you, okay, under HIPAA, I could not come to you and be like, hey, listen, I saw somebody the other day, even though you live in 500 or 5 hours from me.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you about hey, this guy named Jim came in the other day and he tore his rotator cuff.
Yeah.
He's having surgery. And he I couldn't even tell you that. Not like you're ever gonna know, but you just
that violates their law.
So you're gonna then say that there's an amendment for a woman's right to privacy, and therefore we're going to use that. I mean, not an amendment for women's right to privacy, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That we're going to use that as a basis to allow any woman at any time in any place to kill a baby, because why? And here's why I want to know. I want somebody to come on here who's pro-abortion, because I want them to give me the justifiable reason in an example that says a woman comes into an abortion clinic and is like, listen, I'm pregnant, I'm 3 months pregnant, but I don't really want a baby right now because it's going to mess up my feng shui, so I want it to be killed.
No,
how's that okay? I know that happens.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. But see, they'll tell you about the rape and the incest abortions, and those are okay. Okay, so those make up, I think, 0.3% of the abortions committed.
It's 0.01. It's 99.9. It's 0.02. I'm sorry. So it's 99.98% are normal. Just wanting out of convenience. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are those okay, but the others aren't? And does that just you're not going to win anyway. So again, what in the world can you say to me that's yeah, a woman can totally go in there and kill a baby because she just doesn't want it, and the doctors know.
Yep. That's the scary thing, that they know it and they don't care.
Doctors know that that's a baby.
I have thought about that for many years. I was in the pro-life club when I was in college. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed trying to stand up and fight for it. But I really think that will be the deciding. You know how historians look back at is it the Dred Scott case, or the one, the one where the Supreme Court says that, you have a right to own a slave. Good job, Supreme Court. I think, and that pretty much spawned the Civil War. I think we'll look back in 20 or 30 years when they overturn Roe v. Wade, because it's eventually going to get overturned. We'll look back and say that was the linchpin, that was the time bomb, so to speak. Right. Because I really wholeheartedly think, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist, even though I can be pretty pessimistic. I really think that's going to start some infighting, and not just burn down a Walgreens. Like people are going to go a little crazy over it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be people who do that, who are willing to physically fight over Roe v. Wade, are going to be people that probably are not the best prepared to fight anyway. So we'll see.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
going to be
see.
interesting.
We are in a very interesting time in American history and human history, really. I mean, COVID was something that people will talk about probably like 4 generations after we're gone, if we're even
Do you know?
history.
Do you know? I was actually okay. So I was watching it. Came across an old show that I used to watch that I haven't seen in forever, and I started watching it just tonight, actually. And it's the show Shark Tank.
Oh yeah.
Do you know that show? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I started watching it from all the way back in season 1. Now this episode aired, I would say like 2010. I mean,
Yeah.
it was at least 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this lady comes in with a business, and it cracked me up because I thought, boy, she should have started this business in 2019 because she would have been a billionaire. And she comes in with customizable, with printed, with animals and skeleton face masks.
Oh my gosh.
And she and they were like, is this the surgical mask? And she goes, no. And then they're like, do people in America wear masks as much as people in like Japan do? Like, she goes, no, not really. Like, but the fact that she actually can, and this is the same stuff that like they were like, I don't see anybody actually wearing these on their face. And they're the exact kind that you would see people wear now. And I just thought it was hilarious because, again, she waited 10 years and to do that. This was like when the swine flu was going on. So if she would have waited like 10 years right before COVID, she would be swimming. If she had gotten a patent for that and just, made a choice, she was the only one to be able to put anything on her face. It was just funny to look at it now, 2 years after COVID. And here she is with this idea that, half the world probably took advantage of.
Yeah, that is really crazy. I'll have to look up that episode sometime.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Well, I think we're going to wrap this up. We're closing on almost an hour of recording. So we're going to put some people to sleep. So again, you can find our podcasts on YouTube under the channel name DJ Media. We are available on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music as well, or Amazon Music. I think it's Amazon Music or Amazon Podcasts, whatever. We are also on Facebook and Twitter at DJ Media. We're going to try to be a little more active on there and sharing some more content, writing, longer posts, longer format posts, stuff like that. But again, Accepting Reality on Spotify, iTunes, and then DJ Media for YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I hope everybody enjoyed listening. Have a good night.